Lots to talk about today on the political front, and we're joined by Brian Lilley, Toronto Sun columnist. How you doing, Brian?
Very well. It's an exciting time in the world of
Isn't
politics, to
it?
say the least.
Absolutely. Well, let's start with Trump. He's talking about reviving the Keystone XL pipeline. Go figure. He said he'd approve it if the company came back, and he made those comments on Truth Social just after announcing that tariffs are definitely coming for Canada March 4th. Now, it is a little odd, isn't it, right? I mean, it kind of sounds like a conflicting message, right? If you don't need Canadian oil and gas, what do you need a pipeline for, right?
Yeah, that was my thought exactly. It's so around 3 or 4 in the afternoon, he's saying, the tariffs are definitely coming for Canada and for Mexico. 25% tariffs. They've treated us horribly. We shouldn't accept this anymore. Few hours later, he goes on Truth Social. So that the first statement about the tariffs, that was at a White House news conference with French President Emmanuel Macron. And then hours later on Truth Social, he writes, I was just kind of thinking, and then goes on about how Keystone XL has to come back. He's been spending weeks saying that America has enough oil, it doesn't need Canadian oil. You and I know that's not true. The viewers know that's not true. But conflicting messages all around. This is the difficult part of Donald Trump is, I mean, even the reasons that he put forward for the tariffs were different than what he had put forward before. So trying to keep up and trying to nail him down, very difficult.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, and part of me thinks too, like with these the tariffs, is it just, part of his negotiation plan, or just the way he does things keeps people guessing, and it's more of a leverage tool, and I wonder if that's really what it is. But I mean, is it even possible, realistically speaking, to revive the Keystone XL pipeline?
I don't think so. I don't like TransCanada is a different company now. It's now TC Energy. The work that was done. I mean that pipe is been sitting, not being used. So it's probably the stuff that was in the ground. If it wasn't ripped out, it's not in good shape. They went through that process. Starting around 2007, 2008, they were back and forth, up and down, approved. The approvals revoked. It's been very difficult time. I mean, would you get back involved in such a fraught project? Probably not. I mean, maybe someone could revive that. I doubt that TC Energy is going to jump in and say, you know what, we'd really like to be treated as a political punching bag by both sides for the next decade
Yeah.
and try to finish this
Yeah,
pipeline.
I mean, I guess the bright side for anybody thinking about building a pipeline is that you're going to have the support of the Trump administration on that side. On this side, it's still pretty unclear. Now, I think if
But
Polyev,
the Trudeau Liberals had supported Keystone XL previously. Now, would that have changed? I mean, they've passed Bill C-69
yeah,
since then. You've got the radical Stephen Guilbeault, currently the
yeah.
environment minister. Mark Carney is all about net zero. He released his economic plan with no word about oil and gas. So it's doubtful that they would get strong support from the Canadian government. And then you've only got a 4-year window to get this through. Because what if
Yeah,
the Democrats
exactly.
win
So,
again?
yeah, yeah. Give you enough time. I don't know.
Hmm.
Yeah. Oh, man. It's hard to keep up with all the different tariffs that are coming at us. Now, of course, the original tariff's supposed to be about fentanyl and legal border crossers and so forth. And, of course, Canada has responded, at least partially, and, is, at least in theory, committed to, following through on this and making our border secure. So, it is a little odd how we're seeing all these things coming down, and so you have to ask again why. Is it leverage? Now, Trump is also talking about stacking tariffs, so a tariff on a tariff, if I understand that correctly. Do you want to unpack that a bit? Tariffs on top of tariffs, how this would impact us?
Yeah, so March 4th, we could see the across the board 25% tariff on everything. And that would be the baseline. And then if he does stacking tariffs, then the 25% on steel and aluminum would be on top of the general tariff. So that would end up being a 50% tariff, or depending on how they calculate it, could be compounded, which would be even worse. And then he's talked about another tariff on autos or auto parts. Again, that would be on top of the 25% general tariff. So things could get really ugly really quickly. And it's strange because, you know, various governments have been responding to his concerns on the border. Alberta has the sheriffs down at the border helping in between official border crossings. Manitoba's got conservation officers and other police officers down there. Ontario's just announced, they've found 46 pounds of fentanyl at or near the border, they believe destined for the border, with this Operation Deterrence that has helicopters around the Ambassador Bridge and Niagara Falls and all these areas. So things are happening, but Trump is just changing why the tariffs are coming and what the various reasons are. So, we've got to get ready.
Yeah, oh yeah, be ready for anything coming our way for sure. Now, Doug Ford, of course, Ontario Premier, getting ready for an election here in a couple of days. He says he may put a tariff on electricity exports to the U.S. He also talked about, cutting off electricity completely and, oil, gas, and so forth. Problem with that, I guess, would be, if I understand correctly, where you're at in Ontario there, I mean, we export, yes, crude oil, heavy oil, but they refine it and then ship it back up to Ontario, and they could actually shut off the pipeline for Ontarians, right?
There's no good winner in a trade war, and so both sides are going to take actions. So yeah, Ford's latest thing, initially it said shut off the electricity. There are ways to do that, but you could also blow the grid and violate international treaties. But Trump's actions can be seen as a violation of international treaties as well. So he is talking about putting on an extra tariff. He didn't go into detail. Ontario provides an awful lot of electricity to Michigan, Wisconsin, and I believe Pennsylvania as well. And so residents in those states, Trump just won both of them, or all three, sorry, they would start seeing higher electricity prices from a president who promised to make the cost of living lower. The other thing that Ford has promised to do, and he's encouraging every other premier to do it, is delist every American product in your liquor board. I know you guys have a private system in Alberta, but it's an Alberta wholesaler. The Alberta government, I believe, is still the wholesaler. Here, Ontario, the government is the wholesaler and the retailer. And so if those tariffs do go into effect, then every American bourbon, every bottle of Tito's vodka, every California Chardonnay would be taken off the shelf. That was already causing consternation when Ford threatened to do it about a month ago, when Trump was saying the tariffs would come at the beginning of February.
Yeah, it remains to be seen what will actually happen come March 4th, because
He could change his mind.
Yeah, he could change his mind, and it will definitely have a very noticeable effect on the pocketbooks of our American neighbors as well. So it's, like I say, no winners in this one. So I don't know that it's going to last a long time before the repercussions set in, and Trump maybe says, yeah, okay, that's enough for now, and we'll see.
Here's the thinking in Washington. I can tell you this quickly.
Yep.
The thinking in Washington is, yes, 25% tariffs on goods from Canada will make it more expensive, but they also believe that their dollar will get stronger and ours weaker. So the people importing may eat some of the cost, the exporter may eat some of the cost, and the difference might be made up with the different currency valuations. So they're not thinking it will add that much. That's unfortunately the thinking. Let's hope it doesn't get to that, and let's hope these are short-lived.
Yes. Oh, amen to that. Well, Liberal Party holding their leadership debate last night in French, of course. So before we get to talking about any of the policies there, how did they do in French? Because none of them are, that's not their first language, right?
Well, you could say it is for Frank Baylis. He's born, raised in Montreal. I'm not sure the Quebec government would consider that because his parents were both immigrants, but he, born and raised in Montreal, speaks flawless French. Karina Gould from Southern Ontario, Burlington area, she did very well, quite fluent. Chrystia Freeland, so-so. She's pretty good. She's not great. And then Mark Carney. Mark Carney was looking like he was translating everything in his head as he listened to it and then translating it back out into French as he was answering. He had a couple of slip-ups. At one point, he meant to say, we all agree on Hamas, that Hamas is a bad group, and instead he said, we all agree with Hamas. Bit of a mental error that people are pointing out, but what's interesting is the French media are discussing how Mark Carney would get destroyed in a French debate between Yves-François Blanchet, the Bloc leader, and Pierre Poilievre, who has flawless French as well. The liberal support that started to rise up with the leadership race and talk of Mark Carney, a lot of it's coming from Quebec. And now they're looking and saying, his French ain't so good. Will that hurt him? We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Well, okay. Now, I'm assuming they talked some about tariffs and the economy and so forth. Was there, much disagreement between the candidates? I'm seeing headlines saying, "Hey, they pretty much agreed on everything." I mean, was it that bad?
One person I heard on TV said they were in violent agreement with each other.
That's a good line.
There were a few instances. Karina Gould, she has. I don't know if she's a practicing Jew, observant Jew, but she has Jewish background for sure. I know that. And she takes a much different stand on Israel and Hamas and Gaza than some of the others. Frank Bayless was there saying we've got to recognize the Palestinian state. And Gould took him to task, saying you would be rewarding Hamas, to which he denied. But, there's a bit of back and forth there. A lot of the debate was just about Donald Trump and who's best to deal with that. They should have been taking some shots at each other, and they weren't. I mean, you're debating to see who's going to get ahead, but they were very careful not to. Very interesting, because Chrystia Freeland is considered to be in second place behind Mark Carney. Well, if you want to be in first place, you better take down the guy ahead of you. And she didn't do it. In fact, she's the one that corrected Carney when he made the error with Hamas.
Yeah, that just puzzles me. It's a head scratcher. I mean, here's your opportunity, use it. I mean, so it just makes me wondering what's going through their minds, what's going through the minds of the Liberal Party as a whole. I mean, it is interesting that Ruby Dalla, wasn't able to take part, of course, because she got disqualified by the Liberal Party, and they say they allege that she violated, I think, 10 different areas of their race rules, and she of course denies that, appealed, and the appeal was it didn't go through for her. So I'm hearing all kinds of things. I'm not sure what you're hearing there. Some people say, well, she wasn't shy about criticizing Trudeau, wasn't maybe on board with kind of the globalization outlook that much of the Liberal Party has, let's say with the World Economic Forum, that sort of thing. And others would say, well, maybe she was some sort of a threat to the front runner.
I think primarily everything in this race is designed around protecting Mark Carney.
Wow.
That's what it's looked like from the start. The Liberal establishment is behind him. The top people in the Prime Minister's office are supporting him. Everything is about protecting the new king. Justin Trudeau may have said that it was awful that the Americans didn't elect a woman as president just a short time ago, but he's doing everything he can to make sure that Chrystia Freeland isn't elected here. And he would, feel the same way about Ruby Dalla. She was a Liberal MP, but a lot of Liberals see her as an outsider, a tourist in her own party. She sees the party as going too far to the left and wanted to bring that back. So I think at heart, yeah, there were, concerns about her stance on WEF, but Carney was the main reason, in my view. And we've heard Liberal pundits say that openly.
Wow, that's really interesting. Well, you recently wrote about Mark Carney's economic policies. You're saying they would hit jobs the same way Trump's tariffs would. So what is he proposing that you think would hurt our Canadian economy?
Well, until Trump said definitely these new tariffs on March 4th, we were thinking we'd get steel and aluminum tariffs first. And those would affect jobs in places like the steel mills in Regina, in Edmonton, south of Montreal, in Hamilton, in Windsor, Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. Those would be hit because suddenly the steel's more expensive. Some orders would be completed. Some buyers would find a different source, and jobs would be lost. Well, Mark Carney wants to increase the industrial carbon tax. He wants to get rid of the consumer carbon tax, but he wants to increase the industrial one. I took a look at the books of Algoma in Northern Ontario. This steel mill paid $24.6 million for the carbon tax on its operations for the year that ended March 31st, 2024. What happened the very next day? The carbon tax went up last April 1st. What's going to happen this coming April 1st? The industrial carbon tax is going to go up by another 19%. Algoma, if nothing changed from their books for the fiscal year that just ended, this coming year, they'd be paying $36 million in carbon tax.
Doesn't that just basically get passed on to the consumer, though, so we end up paying anyway?
which, and similar to tariffs, makes your product less competitive, which makes your ability to sell fall. And so that will affect jobs. I mean, Carney's policies, I don't see why Canadians are outraged at Trump's tariffs. They should be, but they're not outraged at Carney's. And he also wants to bring in, by the way, a border carbon adjustment. What's that? A tariff, a green tariff on any imports that don't meet his idea of a good climate plan from the country it's coming from.
Wow. Okay. I'm not sure we need more of that in Canada. Okay. Real briefly here. Now, of course, the polls showing things, tightening up with if Carney wins. So the Conservatives, do they have? I mean, have a slight lead, I think, still, but do they have to be concerned about this?
If an election were held today, the reliable, reputable pollsters that I follow show the Conservatives would likely win a majority government. It's still a 7 to 8 point lead, sometimes a little higher. There was a 15 to 20 point lead for a long time. I've said many times on this program and elsewhere that once Trudeau was gone, the polls would tighten up. And then we'll see what happens once the Liberals do pick a leader and the Conservatives have a new target to go after. It was funny listening to the Liberals in their debate say that Pierre Poilievre just lies all the time while they lied about him. I get it's politics and everyone makes claims, but that's what they've been doing about Poilievre. But still, a 7 to 8 point lead, including in places like Ontario. And we'll see how that Quebec debate, the French debate, affects Mark Carney's numbers in Quebec. So, don't panic yet, but they've got a lot of work to do still if they want to win.
Still a ways to go, even if the election is called soon. So, hey, thanks so much for updating us, Brian. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, Brian Lilley, Toronto Sun columnist.